April 25th, 1945, Germany, 0647 hours. The German captain walked toward the American position with a white flag made from his torn undershirt. His hands were shaking. Not from fear of being shot, though that was real, but from something he had just witnessed that made no military sense. In the past 40 minutes, 53 of his soldiers had died. But nobody had heard the shots. Nobody had seen muzzle flash. Nobody could locate the shooter. His men were dying from ghost bullets fired by phantom soldiers using a weapon that should not exist. When Captain Klaus Brenner finally saw the American sniper who had destroyed his company, he stared in disbelief. The soldier's rifle barrel had a cucumber duct taped to it, a farm vegetable, being used to kill German soldiers. What is that?" Brenner asked in broken English. The young American, barely 22 Montana farm boy named Benjamin Carter looked at the scorched cucumber, then at the German captain and said, "Back home, we use these to shoot gophers without scaring the others away. Turns out it works on Germans too." In the next 72 hours, using this absurd farm trick, Ben Carter would kill 97 German soldiers, save 200 American lives, and create a technique so effective that German high command would issue official warnings about vegetable suppression tactics. This is the story of how a Depression-era Montana farm boy turned a cucumber into the most unusual weapon of World War II, and how he carried the weight of those 97 kills for 50 years until a letter from Germany changed everything. But that letter would not arrive until 1970s, 25 years after the war. And what it contained would force Ben to confront a question he had avoided his entire adult life. Was he a killer or a protector? Sometimes the answer is both. 1932, Havre, Montana. The Depression years had turned the high plains into dust. The Carter family worked 300 acres of wheat that barely fed them through winter. Every seed planted was a prayer, every harvest a miracle. Benjamin Carter was 9 years old the year his father taught him to shoot. William Carter was a hard man shaped by World War I trenches and Depression poverty. He had fought at Belleau Wood in 1918, came home with shrapnel in his leg and silence in his eyes. He never talked about France, but sometimes Ben would wake in the night and hear his father walking the fields unable to sleep. William gave his son 10 bullets at the start of summer. "These have to last till fall," he said, holding the cartridges in his weathered palm. "You miss, we eat less. You waste one, you explain to your mother why her garden is gone." Ben learned to shoot with his grandfather's Springfield rifle, the same weapon his father had carried in France. The target was not paper or tin cans. The target was gophers, the small, burrowing animals that destroyed the family vegetable patch with systematic efficiency. One gopher meant 20 ruined plants. One gopher colony meant half the garden gone. But gophers lived in communities. They watched for danger. They warned each other. Shoot one with a normal rifle and the sharp crack echoed across the prairie like thunder. The other gophers scattered underground for hours. You would kill one and lose 20 opportunities. 10 bullets for an entire summer. Ben learned to make every shot count. The summer of 1933 changed everything. Uncle Eli came to visit. He was Ben's mother's brother, half Blackfeet, half Irish, 100% Montana mountain man. Eli, trapped in the northern Rockies, lived alone for months, survived on what he hunted. He knew things about the wilderness that no book could teach. He watched 10-year-old Ben miss 2 gopher shots in the first week, wasting precious ammunition. On the third day, Eli took the boy aside. "You are doing it wrong," Eli said. "Loud shot scares them all away. You need to shoot quiet." "How?" Ben asked. "We do not have money for a silencer." "You do not need one. Nature provides. Take a carrot, or better yet, a cucumber. Thicker walls, hollow it out with your knife. Leave the walls thick. Push it over the barrel, tie it on with cloth. It absorbs the blast. Sounds like a stick breaking instead of a gunshot. Gophers freeze instead of running. You can get 3-4 before the vegetable burns up." Ben thought his uncle was joking, but Eli never joked about survival. The next morning, Ben carved out a cucumber from his mother's garden. He used his pocket knife, working carefully, hollowing the center while leaving the walls about an inch thick. He tied it to the rifle barrel with strips from an old shirt. The first shot shocked him. Instead of the familiar sharp crack that echoed across the prairie, the rifle made a dull thump like someone dropping a sack of grain on hard ground. The sound was wrong, unexpected, almost gentle. The gopher dropped. The others sat there confused, looking around but not fleeing. They did not understand what had happened. There had been no warning, no thunder crack to send them diving for their burrows. Ben worked the bolt, chambered another round, fired again. Another thump, another gopher down. The others remained frozen in uncertainty. He got 5 gophers with 1 bullet before the cucumber split from the heat and had to be replaced. 5 gophers, 1 bullet, 4 bullets saved. In a summer where 10 bullets had to last 3 months, that was everything. His father saw the results that evening and said nothing. But he nodded once, a small gesture of approval that meant more than words. If it worked, that was all that mattered. Survival required innovation. The Depression taught that lesson to anyone who wanted to live. Over the next 7 years, Ben perfected the technique. He learned that cucumbers worked better than carrots because the walls were thicker and lasted longer. He learned that fresh vegetables were essential because dry ones cracked immediately from the heat. He learned that the effective range was about 200 yards beyond which the shot was loud enough to scatter the gophers anyway. He learned to change the cucumber after 3 or 4 shots before it became burned mush that could fall off mid-shot. By age 17, Ben could harvest 10 gophers with 3 bullets. The trick saved the family garden every summer. It saved food. It saved money. It saved his family from hunger in years when wheat prices were so low that selling the crop barely covered the cost of seed. But Ben never imagined that this farm boy trick, learned from a Blackfeet trapper on a Montana homestead during the worst of the Depression, would one day be used to kill soldiers in a European war. October 15th, 1940. Ben was 17 years old. He was in town buying supplies when it happened. His younger brother Danny, 14 years old, was working the wheat harvest alone. The tractor rolled on a hillside. Danny was crushed underneath. By the time Ben got home, his brother was dead. Ben blamed himself. He should have been there. He should have been working that field. Danny was too young to handle the tractor on that slope. Too young to die. His father said it was not Ben's fault. His mother said it was God's will. But Ben could not accept it. He had failed to protect his little brother. And that failure carved itself into his soul like words on a gravestone. 13 months later, on December 8, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor, Ben walked into the Army recruitment office in Havre and enlisted. The recruiter asked why he was joining. "My brother died last year," Ben said. "Tractor accident. I could not protect him. Maybe I can protect someone else." The recruiter nodded and filled out the paperwork. Ben was tall, farm-strong, comfortable with rifles. He was exactly what the Army needed. They accepted him immediately. Ben did not tell anyone the real reason he enlisted. It was not patriotism, though he loved his country. It was not adventure, though he had never left Montana. It was guilt, pure and simple. He had failed to save Danny. Maybe if he saved other people's brothers, other people's sons, the scales would balance. Maybe the weight would ease. Basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia was both easier and harder than farm work. Easier because there was unlimited ammunition and no punishment for missing. Harder because everything had rules: when to shoot, how to stand, where to aim. The Army wanted to standardize everything, turn every soldier into an interchangeable part. On his second day at the rifle range, Ben qualified expert marksman, hitting 48 out of 50 targets at 300 yards. The instructor asked where he had learned to shoot. "Gophers," Ben said, "since I was 9. The instructor did not know whether to be impressed or as disturbed. In August 1942, the Army selected Ben for sniper school. The 82nd Airborne Division was forming specialized sniper sections, and Ben's name came up fast. They sent him to advanced training where they taught him things he already knew and things that contradicted what actually worked. They taught him to use the M1 Garand rifle with a scope. They taught him wind reading, breathing control, range estimation. They taught him military tactics, communication protocols, how to work with a spotter. But they also taught him things that Ben knew were wrong. They said never take multiple shots from the same position because it gives away your location. Ben knew that if you mask the sound and flash, you can shoot all day. They said silencers are complex, expensive military-only equipment. Ben knew a cucumber works almost as well for 5 cents. He kept these thoughts to himself. He graduated top of his class. From 1942 to 1944, Ben fought in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. He worked as a conventional sniper, taking careful shots at long range, always moving after a kill, following doctrine. He was effective. 8 confirmed kills in North Africa, 12 in Sicily, 10 in Italy, 30 total by the spring of 1945. But every face stayed with him. Every German soldier he killed through his scope had a face and expression, a moment of life before death. Ben remembered them all. Their faces appeared in his dreams. Sometimes they spoke to him asking why. He never had an answer. April 1945. The 82nd Airborne was pushing deep into Germany. The war was ending. Everyone knew it. But pockets of German resistance remained scattered units fighting not because they believed in victory, but because they did not know what else to do. Ben's company was clearing a farming region east of the Rhine, moving through small villages and abandoned homesteads. The landscape reminded him of Montana. Rolling fields, drainage ditches, tree lines. Good farming country now scarred by war. On April 22nd, Ben's squad was moving through an abandoned German farm when he noticed something: cucumber plants growing wild in what had been someone's vegetable garden. The farm had been abandoned for months, maybe longer, but the cucumbers kept growing. They were thick, green, unharvested, perfect. Ben was hungry. They had been eating rations for days. He picked a cucumber and ate it, grateful for fresh vegetables. The taste brought him back to Montana, to his mother's garden, to summers spent protecting those plants from gophers. He held the cucumber in his hand and stared at it for a long moment. And then he thought about gophers, about Uncle Eli, about 7 summers of shooting quietly so the sound would not scatter the colony. Sergeant Sam O'Brien, Ben's spotter, a lobsterman from Maine who had joined the Army in 1942, walked over and saw the look on Ben's face. "What are you thinking?" Sam asked. "These cucumbers look exactly like the ones back home," Ben said slowly. "The ones Uncle Eli taught me to use when I was 10. And I am thinking that maybe that old farm trick works in war too." Sam stared at him. "You want to shoot Germans with vegetables?" "I want to shoot Germans quietly," Ben said. "The vegetable is just a tool." That evening, Ben carved out a cucumber using his combat knife, hollowing the center just like Uncle Eli had taught him 20 years ago. He tied it to his M1 Garand with cloth strips torn from a German uniform. He found a target, an abandoned German helmet on a fence post 200 yards away. He fired. The sound was wrong, not the sharp crack of a rifle. A muffled thump, almost like a distant mortar. The muzzle flash was diffused through the cucumber, a brief glow instead of a bright flash. Sam's jaw dropped. "That actually works." Ben checked the cucumber. It was scorched inside, but still intact. Good for 2 or 3 more shots. "If this worked on gophers in Montana," Ben said, "and it works on fence posts in Germany, maybe it works on Germans too." April 23rd, 0500 hours. Lieutenant Bradford briefed the morning mission. German headquarters element in a cluster of farm buildings, roughly 200 yards from American positions. Estimated 12 to 15 Germans visible, probably 20 or more total. The plan was artillery bombardment at 0600, followed by infantry assault. Ben's role was overwatch with Sam. Eliminate Germans trying to escape or reinforce. Standard sniper work. But Ben had a different idea. He pulled Sam aside before the briefing ended. "What if we hit them before the artillery?" Ben said quietly. "Use the cucumber trick. Kill enough to cause panic. Maybe they flee before the assault even starts." Sam looked at him for a long moment. "That is actually brilliant," he finally said. "Or insane. Maybe both. Only one way to find out." At 0530 hours, Ben and Sam crawled through a drainage ditch to within 200 yards of the German farm. They had good sight lines and decent cover. Too close for comfort if the Germans had snipers, but perfect for cucumber suppression. Ben prepared 3 large cucumbers he had gathered from the abandoned garden, carving them out, with his knife hollowing the centers, leaving thick walls. He secured the first cucumber to his rifle barrel with cloth strips. Sam watched with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. "This looks like something from a cartoon," Sam whispered. "Looks like 5 dead Germans if I do not mess it up," Ben replied. At 0545 hours, German soldiers began emerging from the buildings for their morning routine. Smoking, talking, relaxing. They thought the Americans were kilometers away. They had no idea 2 men were watching them from 200 yards. Through his scope, Ben selected his first target, a German soldier drinking from a canteen beside a well. Range exactly 200 yards. No wind. Target stationary, unaware. Ben controlled his breathing, settled the crosshairs on the German's chest, squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked normally, but the sound was a muffled thump, not a sharp crack. The muzzle flash diffused through the cucumber, a brief glow instead of a bright flash. The German collapsed. His canteen clattered on the ground. The other Germans froze. They looked around confused. One ran to the fallen man, probably thinking heart attack or stroke. They had no idea what had happened. No crack, no flash, no direction to return fire. Sam watched through binoculars, his voice tight with excitement. They have no idea where that came from. Do it again. Ben worked the bolt, chambered a fresh round. The cucumber was intact, smoking slightly, but holding. At least 2 more shots. He selected his second target, a German kneeling beside the first casualty trying to help. Ben led him slightly to account for movement, then fired. Another muffled thump. The German pitched forward. More confusion. Germans shouting, running for cover, pulling rifles off shoulders, scanning the wrong tree line 200 yards from Ben's actual position. Total chaos. Ben fired a third shot. A German who had been scanning the horizon went down. Now the Germans were panicking. Some were firing randomly into hedgerows far from Ben's position. Others were diving for cover. The cucumber was disintegrating, split in 3 places from the heat. Ben pulled it off, tossed it aside, slid the second cucumber onto his barrel. The process took 8 seconds. Sam was calling targets now. His voice low and urgent. German at barn corner, German in doorway, 2 running left. Ben fired 4 more times in 90 seconds. 3 hits, 1 miss, when a German dove at the wrong moment. The second cucumber was done smoking and split useless. 7 Germans down. The rest had scattered into buildings or were hiding behind cover, afraid to expose themselves to an enemy they could not locate. 15 minutes later, the scheduled artillery bombardment began hitting positions already in chaos. When the American infantry made their assault, they met almost no resistance. The Germans who had survived Ben's shooting had fled east, terrified and confused. Lieutenant Bradford found Ben and Sam after the farm was secured. He wanted to know what had happened. Why had the Germans scattered before the bombardment even started? Sam explained the cucumber trick. Bradford stared at them like they had grown second heads. You are joking, Bradford said. Ben showed him the split cucumber still warm from firing. Physics, Ben said. The vegetable absorbs the blast muffles, the sound diffuses the flash. Not silent, but directionless. At close range in the right conditions, almost as good as a real suppressor. Bradford examined the cucumber, smelled the scorched interior, shook his head slowly. I will put it in my report, he said, but headquarters will not believe it. Just keep doing whatever works. Word spread through the battalion by evening. Carter and his cucumber trick. Most soldiers thought it was a joke. A few asked for details. Ben showed them the preparation method, how to carve the vegetable, how to secure it, how many shots you could expect before replacement. But only Ben had practiced this since age 9. Only Ben had the muscle memory, the understanding, the instinctive knowledge of how to use it effectively in combat. Others could copy the technique, but they lacked the 7 years of Montana summers that had made it second nature. Over the next 2 days, Ben would demonstrate exactly how deadly the cucumber trick could be. And he would learn that killing efficiently does not make it easier to live with. But first, there was something he needed to find. Something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. April 24th afternoon. Ben and Sam were clearing the battlefield, checking bodies for intelligence. Standard procedure. Look for documents, maps, anything that might help. Ben found a young German soldier lying face down. He had been Ben's 3rd kill of the morning, shot through the chest while scanning the tree line. Ben needed to check his pockets for papers. He rolled the body over. The face was young, too young, barely old enough to shave. The kind of face that should be worried about schoolwork and girls, not bullets, and death. Ben checked the soldier's paybook. Private Friedrich Adler, born April 12, 1927, age 18 years old, 3 years younger than Ben, 5 years younger than Danny had been when the tractor rolled. There was a letter in the boy's breast pocket, blood-stained but readable. German language, but Ben had learned some German from the Mennonite farmers who lived near Havre. He could read enough. The letter was from Friedrich's mother. My dear Friedrich, please come home. The war is lost. Everyone knows it. Just survive. Just come back to us. Your little sister asks about you every day. She is only 8. She does not understand why you are gone. We have no food. The farm is destroyed. But we will manage if you just come home alive. Please, my son, do not be a hero. Be a survivor. Your loving mother. Ben sat there in the mud holding the letter, staring at Friedrich's face. 18 years old. A farm boy from Bavaria. His mother begging him to come home. His 8-year-old sister waiting for him. And Ben had shot him through the chest at 180 yards. Sam found Ben sitting there 10 minutes later, still holding the letter. You okay? Sam asked quietly. He is 18, Sam, Ben said. His voice was flat, empty. Farm kid from Bavaria. His mother wanted him home. His little sister is waiting. And I killed him. He would have killed Americans if you had not stopped him. I know, Ben said. Does not make it easier. Sam did not have an answer for that. There was no answer. War was full of questions that had no good answers. You did your duty. You protected your friends. You killed the enemy before the enemy killed you. And then you carried the weight of what you had done for the rest of your life. Ben put Friedrich's letter in his pocket. He kept it. A reminder, every number is a person. Every kill is a family destroyed, even when it is necessary, especially when it is necessary. That night, Ben could not eat. He sat alone cleaning his rifle, trying not to think about Friedrich's face, trying not to see his own brother Danny in that young German's features, trying not to hear the 8-year-old sister asking when her brother was coming home. Sam sat down beside him. We are at war, Ben, Sam said gently. Friedrich was the enemy. You did your job. My job is killing kids who look like Danny. Ushi, Ben said. That is what this is. Danny died in an accident. Friedrich died because Hitler started a war, not your fault. Then why do I feel like I murdered him? Sam had no answer. Ben had joined the army to protect people because he could not protect Danny. But now he was killing boys who could be Danny. Boys with mothers and little sisters. Boys who just wanted to survive and go home. What did that make him, a protector or just another killer in a war full of killing? He did not know. And that uncertainty would stay with him for 50 years. But over the next 48 hours, Ben Carter would kill 90 more German soldiers using the cucumber trick. He would save 200 American and British lives. He would create a technique so effective that German high command would issue warnings about American vegetable suppression tactics. And he would accept the surrender of a German captain who would spend the next 25 years searching for him just to say thank you. Because sometimes in war, mercy matters more than victory. And sometimes the greatest weapon is not the one that kills the most efficiently, but the one that knows when to stop killing. The sun was setting over Germany on April 23, 1945. Ben Carter cleaned his rifle, Friedrich's letter in his pocket, 96 more kills ahead of him in the next 72 hours. He did not know it yet, but this was only the beginning of the story. The real story would not end until 1994 in a cemetery in Montana, when a 74-year-old German captain would fly across the Atlantic to attend the funeral of the American farm boy who had given him his life back. But that was still 50 years away. Tonight, there was only the weight of one 18-year-old German soldier, and the terrible knowledge that tomorrow there would be more. April 24, 1945, 0700 hours. The morning after Ben Carter discovered that cucumber suppression could kill 7 Germans without them understanding where the shots came from, Lieutenant Bradford called another briefing. New mission. German forces holding a canal bridge 3 kilometers east. Intelligence estimated 50 defenders, mostly Volkssturm. These were not regular army soldiers. They were old men and teenage boys drafted in the final desperate months of the war when Germany had run out of real soldiers. But they held a bridge the Americans needed, and bridges were always expensive to take. The plan was standard: mortar barrage starting at 0800, infantry assault across the bridge under covering fire. It would work. It would cost American casualties. Bridges always did. Ben sat in the back of the briefing listening to the plan, thinking about Friedrich Adler, thinking about the letter from his mother, thinking about the 8-year-old sister who would never see her brother again. Sam leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" "No," Ben said quietly, "but I will do my job anyway." After the briefing, Ben approached Bradford with a different plan. What if a three-man team infiltrated close to the bridge before dawn? What if they used cucumber suppression to systematically eliminate every visible German? Create enough confusion that the defense collapsed before the assault even started. Bradford looked at him for a long moment. How many cucumbers do you have? I can gather 8, maybe 10. And you really think you can break their defense with vegetables? Yesterday I killed 7 Germans and they never figured out where I was shooting from. Today I want to try 20. Bradford approved the mission. Worst case, Ben's team got killed and they did the assault anyway. Best case, they saved American lives. The math was simple. Ben spent the next hour gathering cucumbers from abandoned German gardens. Other soldiers watched him filling his pack with vegetables and shook their heads. Carter bringing his lunch to war. But nobody laughed anymore. Not after yesterday. At 0530 hours, Ben, Sam, and a third soldier named Corporal James Mitchell moved through the darkness toward the canal bridge. They used drainage ditches for cover, crawling the last 200 meters on their bellies through cold mud. By 0630, they were in position. 180 yards from the bridge, perfect range for cucumber suppression. Ben could see Germans on both sides of the canal. Some were manning machine gun positions. Others were eating breakfast, smoking, talking. They looked tired. They looked like they wanted to go home. Ben thought about Friedrich's letter again. These boys probably had mothers writing them similar letters, sisters waiting for them. But if they stayed on that bridge, they would kill Americans. And Ben's job was to stop that from happening. He carved out the first cucumber, secured it to his rifle, selected his first target through the scope, a German machine gunner in a sandbag position on the east side of the canal. That gun would slaughter Americans trying to cross the bridge. The gunner had to go first. Ben controlled his breathing, settled the crosshairs, squeezed. The muffled thump. The gunner slumped forward. The assistant gunner jumped up, confused, looking for the threat. He did not understand what had happened. There had been no sound, no flash, nothing to indicate a direction. Ben's second shot dropped the assistant gunner before he could figure it out. 2 Germans dead. The others were ducking, shouting, unable to identify where the shots were coming from. Some were firing randomly into tree lines 400 yards from Ben's actual position. Ben changed cucumbers. The process took 8 seconds. He had practiced it so many times in Montana summers that his hands moved automatically. Pull off burned vegetable, slide fresh one on, secure with cloth, ready. He fired again. German officer trying to organize a response. Down. Another German running between positions with ammunition. Down. A second machine gun crew setting up. Both gunners down. Every shot was carefully placed for maximum disruption. Not just killing, but breaking their will to fight. Every unexplained death increased panic. Eventually, panic defeats training. The Germans were falling apart. Soldiers hiding in buildings, refusing to expose themselves. Others abandoning positions, retreating east, running from a phantom sniper they could not locate. Ben fired 23 rounds in 40 minutes, used 6 cucumbers, 19 confirmed kills or wounds. By 0730, the defensive position had collapsed. Germans were fleeing or surrendering. When the American assault came at 0800, they met almost no resistance. The bridge was secured with 0 American casualties. One soldier sprained his ankle jumping into a ditch. That was the only injury. The company commander personally thanked Ben, recommended him for a medal. Ben did not want a medal. He wanted the faces to stop appearing in his dreams. That afternoon, Ben and Sam were searching bodies again, looking for intelligence. Ben found another young German, 19 years old according to his papers. Another letter from his mother in his pocket, almost identical to Friedrich's letter. Ben sat there holding 2 letters now, 2 mothers begging their sons to come home. 2 sons who would never make it. Sam tried to pull him away. Ben, you need to stop reading those. Maybe I need to read them, Ben said. Maybe that is the price of doing this. The price is too high if it breaks you. Maybe I am already broken, Ben said quietly. Maybe we all are, and we just do not know it yet. That evening, Ben could not eat again. He sat alone with 2 blood-stained letters in his pocket, trying to reconcile what he was doing. He had killed 26 Germans in 2 days, saved maybe 50 American lives. The math said he was doing the right thing. But math did not explain why his hands shook when he tried to sleep. Sam found him sitting there in the dark. You did good today, Ben. 50 Americans going home to their families because of you, and 26 Germans not going home to theirs. That is war. I know, Ben said. Does not make it right, just makes it necessary. April 25th, 1945. 0200 hours. Ben could not sleep. He lay in his bedroll thinking about Friedrich Adler and the other German boy whose name he did not know, thinking about their mothers, their sisters, thinking about Danny. At 0300, Lieutenant Bradford woke him. Big mission. German company holding a vital crossroads 5 kilometers east. 120 soldiers. Regular army well-equipped, determined. Their orders were to hold the position for 48 hours to cover the retreat of larger German forces. The American plan was a full assault, artillery preparation, armor support, 2 companies of infantry. It would work. Eventually. Cost would be high, dozens of American casualties, full day of fighting. Ben sat up. Let me try the cucumber trick first. Bradford looked at him in the darkness. Against 120 Germans. Against their leadership and key weapon crews. If I can kill enough officers and machine gunners, maybe the defense collapses without a major assault. That is a big maybe. Yesterday I broke 50 Germans with 23 shots. Today I want to try 80. Bradford was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. You have 12 hours. If it does not work, we do the assault anyway. Ben gathered his gear, woke Sam. They recruited a 3rd sniper, a soldier named Daniel Lee, Chinese-American from Seattle, aged 24, excellent field craft from hunting deer in the Pacific Northwest. Ben explained the cucumber technique to Daniel, showed him how to carve the vegetables, secure it, expect 3 to 4 shots each. Daniel listened carefully, nodded. Said nothing. He understood this was not a joke. They gathered 30 cucumbers between them. Ben carried 12. Daniel carried 8. Sam carried 10 reserves. 30 cucumbers through enemy territory. It would be hilarious if it was not deadly serious. At 0430 hours, the 3 men moved through the darkness. They used the same drainage ditch approach that had worked at the bridge. By 0500, they were positioned within 150 yards of the German defensive position. Ben and Daniel set up 60 yards apart. Sam positioned between them, coordinating targets with hand signals. This was closer than Ben had ever worked. 150 yards. If the Germans had competent snipers, if they organized a proper search, the 3 Americans would be dead. But Ben was counting on confusion. On the psychological impact of soldiers dying from invisible silent weapons. On panic spreading faster than discipline could contain it. The plan was simple. Start shooting at 600. Eliminate as many Germans as possible before they adapted. Withdraw before they organize a response. 12 hours to break 120 Germans. It seemed impossible. Ben prepared his first cucumber, checked his sight picture, selected his first target, a German sentry standing beside a radio antenna. That radio was their link to higher command. The radio operator had to go first. At exactly 600 hours, Ben fired. The muffled thump. The sentry dropped. 3 seconds later, Daniel fired from his position 60 yards away. A German officer emerging from the command post. Down. For the next 40 minutes, Ben and Daniel worked in rhythm. Sam coordinated between them, calling targets, tracking kills. Shoot from one position. Germans react toward that direction. Other shooter hits them from a different angle. The cucumbers muffled each shot, diffused each flash. Created the impression of fire coming from multiple directions from everywhere and nowhere. The Germans completely disintegrated. They were taking casualties from invisible threats. They could not locate the shooters. They could not organize responses. Officers who tried to rally soldiers were shot. Machine gun crews who tried to suppress the phantom snipers were shot. Radio operators trying to call for help were shot. Ben's rhythm was mechanical. Acquire target. Fire. A confirmed kill through scope. Work bolt. Chamber fresh round. Repeat. Every 10 to 12 shots, change cucumber. Toss the burned one. Slide fresh one on. 8 seconds. Back to shooting. Sam kept count on paper, marking kills with a pencil stub. After 20 minutes, Ben had fired 30 rounds. Used 7 cucumbers. 26 confirmed kills. After 30 minutes, 43 rounds. 37 confirmed kills. After 40 minutes, 47 rounds fired. 41 confirmed kills. Daniel's count was similar. 32 rounds. 27 confirmed kills. Combined, they had killed 68 German soldiers in 40 minutes. The defensive position that was supposed to hold for 48 hours was collapsing in less than 1 hour. At 0640 hours, a German officer emerged from the command post. He was not running. He was not taking cover. He was walking slowly, deliberately toward the American position. In his hands, he held a white flag, a torn undershirt tied to a stick. Through his scope, Ben could see the man's face. He was older than the others, maybe 45, weathered features, exhausted eyes, the face of a man who had seen too much war. The German officer was shouting something in English. Ben could hear him across the distance. "Please stop shooting. We surrender. Just stop." Ben could have killed him. Easy shot. 150 yards. Clear sight picture. One squeeze of the trigger. But something in the man's voice stopped him. This was not cowardice. This was not weakness. This was a commander trying to save his men, trying to stop the killing while some of them were still alive. Sam whispered urgently, "It could be a trick." Ben watched the German officer through his scope. The man had lowered the white flag and was standing completely exposed, arms spread wide, making himself the most obvious target possible. He was shouting again, "My men, please, they are just boys, let them surrender. No more killing." Ben lowered his rifle, stood up, exposed himself, waved the German forward. The officer walked toward them, hands shaking. Not from fear of being shot, though that fear was real. His hands shook from something else. Relief maybe, or exhaustion, or the weight of command in a lost war. When he was close enough to speak normally, the German officer said in broken English, "Thank you for stopping, for mercy." "How many men do you have left?" Ben asked. 23 still alive, maybe 5 wounded. We cannot fight invisible enemy. We surrender." The officer looked at Ben's rifle, seeing the cucumber remnants still smoking on the barrel. His eyes widened in disbelief. "What is that on your weapon? Trade secret," Ben said. "Let's just say farm boys know tricks soldiers do not." The German officer stared at the cucumber for a long moment. Then he looked at Ben's face. Young, maybe 22, farm boy from somewhere, and he had just destroyed an entire company with a vegetable. "My name is Klaus Brenner," the officer said. "Hauptmann Captain, I want to remember your name, so I can thank you properly someday." "Private Benjamin Carter," Ben said. "Montana." "I will remember," Klaus said. "I promise." 23 German soldiers walked out of their positions with hands raised. They looked terrified. They looked relieved. They looked like they wanted to go home. American infantry moved in at 0900 hours, occupied the positions without firing a single shot, found abandoned weapons, discarded equipment, signs of complete panic. Several split cucumbers lying in the grass, which confused everyone until Ben explained. Battalion Commander Major Thompson met Ben's team personally. He had watched through binoculars from a forward observation post, seen the entire German defensive position disintegrate. "How many casualties did you inflict?" Thompson asked. Sam showed his paper with the pencil marks. 68 confirmed, sir, conservative count. Only marked what I personally verified through binoculars. Thompson stared at the number, then at the 3-man team, then back at the number. "You destroyed an entire German company. 3 men, 40 minutes, with cucumbers." "Yes, sir." "I am putting this in my report, but nobody will believe it." "Respectfully, sir," Ben said, "I do not care if anyone believes it. I care that those 23 Germans surrendered instead of dying, and I care that no Americans died taking this position." Thompson nodded slowly. "Fair point, Private. Fair point." That evening, Ben sat alone counting. 41 kills at the crossroads, 19 at the bridge, 7 at the farm, 67 Germans dead in 3 days, plus the 30 he had killed in conventional sniping over the previous 3 years. 97 total confirmed kills, 97 human beings, 97 sons, brothers, maybe fathers, 97 families receiving death notices, 97 mothers writing letters their sons would never read. And Friedrich Adler's letter still in Ben's pocket, blood-stained and folded, a reminder that every number was a person. Sam found him sitting there in the dark. "You did good today, Ben. Saved maybe 200 American lives." Thompson said so himself. "I killed 97 people, Sam. That is not good. That is just necessary. Necessary counts for something. Tell that to Friedrich's mother. Tell that to his 8-year-old sister waiting for him to come home. Sam sat down beside him. You cannot think about that. Not now, not during a war. You will break. Maybe I am already broken, Ben said. Maybe we all are, and we just do not know it yet. But Ben was not thinking only about the Germans he had killed. He was thinking about the 23 who had surrendered, about Klaus Brenner, the German captain, who had walked toward American guns with a white flag trying to save his men. Ben had chosen to stop shooting. He could have killed them all, but he had accepted the surrender instead. And somehow that choice felt more important than all the killing that had come before it. 23 Germans going home, 23 families getting their sons and fathers back. That had to count for something, even if it did not balance the 97 who would never go home. Klaus Brenner spent that night in a prisoner of war camp thinking about the young American soldier who had destroyed his company and then showed mercy. The farm boy from Montana who turned vegetables into weapons. Klaus made a promise to himself that night. If he survived this war, if he made it home to Germany, he would find that soldier someday, and he would thank him properly for giving him and 23 others their lives back. It would take 25 years. But Klaus Brenner was a man who kept his promises. April 26, 1945. Ben's final day of cucumber sniping. Smaller operations. Scattered German holdouts. Nothing like the massive assaults of the previous 2 days. By evening, Ben's final count was complete. April 23rd, 7 kills. April 24th, 19 kills. April 25th, 41 kills. April 26th, 30 kills. Total 97 Germans killed in 4 days using cucumber suppression, plus 30 from earlier conventional sniping. Career total, 127 confirmed kills, but Ben only counted the 97. Those felt different, more personal, more calculated. He had hunted them systematically, shot them quietly, watched them die, confused and terrified, unable to understand what was killing them. That was worse somehow than honest combat. Worse than a fair fight. He had killed them the way you kill gophers. Efficiently. Quietly. Without giving them a chance to fight back. The technique worked. It saved American lives. But it felt wrong in a way that regular sniping did not. And Ben could not explain why. May 8, 1945. Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over. Ben was in a small Dutch town sharing drinks with his platoon, trying to process the simple fact that he had survived. So many had not. Friends from basic training, dead. Snipers he had worked with, dead. Farm boys from Montana who enlisted the same day, buried in cemeteries across France and Germany and Italy. And Ben was alive. The randomness of it felt impossible to reconcile. That night, Sam found Ben sitting alone outside, staring at the stars. We made it, Sam said. We actually made it. Yeah, Ben said quietly. We did. So why do you look like you are at a funeral? Because 97 Germans did not make it, and I put them there. Sam sat down beside him and then, you did your job, Ben. You protected our guys. That is all any of us could do. I know, Ben said, but knowing does not make it easier. They sat in silence for a while. Then Sam asked the question he had been avoiding for weeks. What are you going to do when you get home? Go back to the farm, Ben said. Grow wheat. Try to forget. Think you can forget? No, Ben said honestly, but maybe I can learn to live with it. He pulled Friedrich Adler's letter from his pocket. Still there, still blood-stained, still a reminder that every kill was a human being with people who loved them. I am keeping this, Ben said, so I never forget what I did, even when it was necessary, especially when it was necessary. Sam nodded. You are a good man, Ben Carter. Better than most. Good men do not kill 97 people. Good men do what is necessary to protect their brothers. That is what you did. That is all you did. Ben wanted to believe that, but he could not stop seeing Friedrich's face, could not stop imagining the 8-year-old sister who would grow up without her brother, could not stop thinking about Klaus Brenner and the 23 men he had saved by accepting their surrender. 97 dead, 23 alive. The math was complicated. The moral weight was heavier than any rifle he had ever carried. And he would carry that weight for the next 50 years, until a letter arrived from Germany in 1970 that would change everything he thought he knew about killing mercy and redemption. But that was still 25 years away. Tonight, there was only the weight of 97 German soldiers and the terrible knowledge that necessary and right are not always the same thing. The war was over. But for Ben Carter, the real battle was just beginning. The battle to live with what he had done. The battle to find meaning in the numbers. The battle to understand whether he was a protector or just another killer in a war full of killing. He did not know the answer yet, but he would spend the rest of his life trying to find it. The Cucumber Sniper. Part 3. The Long Road Home, August 1945. Ben Carter returned to Montana in early October. The train ride from New York took 3 days. He spent most of that time staring out the window watching America pass by. Cities, towns, farmland, all of it untouched by war, all of it peaceful. It felt unreal after 3 years in Europe. When he finally arrived in Havre, his father was waiting at the station. William Carter looked older, thinner. The depression and worry had carved new lines into his face, but his eyes were the same, hard, steady, the eyes of a man who had seen war and survived it. They shook hands, did not embrace. That was not the Carter way. "Welcome home, son," William said. "Good to be back," Ben replied. They drove to the farm in silence. Ben looked at the wheat fields, the rolling hills, the big ski. It looked exactly like it had when he left, but everything felt different. Or maybe he was the one who had changed. That evening they sat on the porch. William smoked his pipe. Ben cleaned his rifle even though it did not need cleaning. "Old habits." "You did your duty," William finally said. "That is all we can ask." "My duty was killing kids younger than Danny," Ben said quietly. William was silent for a long moment. Then he said something he had never said before. "I killed men at Belleau Wood 27 years ago. Still see their faces sometimes. Still wake up at night." Ben looked at his father. In all the years since World War I, William had never spoken about France, never mentioned what he had done, never shared the weight. "Does it get easier?" Ben asked. "No," William said. "You just learned to carry it better. You did what you had to do. You ended the war so no more Dannys would die. Now you have to live with it, like I have lived with Belleau Wood." It was the longest conversation they had ever had about war, and it was enough. The Carter way was to do what was necessary, carry the weight, and not burden others with it. Ben understood that now. He was part of a long line of men who had killed when killing was necessary, and then came home and farmed wheat and tried to live with what they had done. November 1946, Ben married Helen Morrison. She was a school teacher in Havre. 24 years old, smart, kind, patient. She knew Ben had been a sniper in the war. She knew he had seen terrible things. But she did not know the specifics, and she did not assume. One evening early in their marriage, Helen said, "Do you want to talk about the war?" "No," Ben said. "I really do not." She never asked again. Some wounds heal better in silence. Over the next years, Ben and Helen built a life. They had 3 children, Michael in 1948, Sarah in 1950, Daniel Jr. in 1953, named after Ben's brother who had died in the tractor accident. Ben took over his father's farm in 1955 when William's health failed. He expanded it to 500 acres. Good years and bad years, droughts and harvests. The hard work of farming that left no time for thinking about the past. Ben rarely talked about the war. When he did, he told funny stories. Sam's bad cooking, card games in Italy, the time Daniel Lee got drunk on Italian wine and sang Chinese opera. Happy stories, safe stories. He never mentioned the cucumber trick, never mentioned the 97 kills, never mentioned Friedrich Adler's letter which he kept hidden in a locked box in his closet. His children grew up thinking their father was a regular soldier who had done his duty and come home. They had no idea about the weight he carried, the faces that appeared in his dreams, the letters from German mothers he had made widows. March 1968, a stranger came to the farm. Dr. Robert Jameson from the University of Montana, military historian researching World War II sniper tactics. He had found Ben's name in after-action reports. Private Benjamin Carter. Improvised suppression technique. 97 confirmed kills, April 1945. "Mr. Carter," Dr. Jameson said, "I would like to interview you about your wartime service, specifically about the cucumber technique. on condition nothing publishes during your lifetime. Ben agreed, but only if the interview stayed sealed until after his death. He did not want his children knowing, did not want his grandchildren thinking of him as a killer. They did the interview in Ben's back pasture, the same field where Danny had died in the tractor accident 28 years before. Ben showed Jameson how to prepare a cucumber, how to hollow it out, how to secure it to the barrel, how to fire 3 or 4 shots before replacement. He demonstrated firing 3 suppressed shots at a target 200 yards away. Jameson heard the muffled thumps, saw the diffused flash, understood immediately why it had been so effective. "This actually works," Jameson said, amazed. "The sound suppression is significant." "Not silent," Ben corrected, "but confusing. At close range and right conditions, nearly as good as a real suppressor." They talked for 3 hours. Ben explained the technique, the tactics, the 4 days in April 1945, the 97 confirmed kills, the 23 Germans who surrendered. Then Jameson asked the question Ben had been avoiding. "Mr. Carter, do you feel guilt about the 97 German soldiers you killed?" Ben looked across his wheat field, the same field where Danny had died, where his father had taught him to shoot, where 3 generations of Carters had worked the land and tried to live honest lives. "I feel guilt about war itself," Ben finally said, "about the waste, about millions dead for reasons that seem less clear every year that passes. But do I feel guilt about doing my job effectively? No, those Germans would have killed Americans if given the chance. My responsibility was to my own side. I fulfilled that responsibility as best I could." "What do you want people to understand about the cucumber trick?" Ben thought carefully before answering. "It was not about cucumbers. It was about using whatever resources you had to solve the problem in front of you. Farm boys understand this instinctively. We grew up improvising with limited resources. Military institutions struggle with it because they are built on standardization and formal procedures. The cucumber trick worked because it was simple, practical, perfectly suited to specific tactical problems I faced in Germany in April 1945. It would not have worked in different conditions against different enemies. But in that time and place, it was exactly what was needed." "One more question," Jameson said. "The reports mention you kept a German soldier's letter. May I ask about that?" Ben pulled Friedrich Adler's letter from his pocket. 23 years old now, blood-stained, folded carefully, carried every day. He read it aloud to Jameson in English. The mother begging her son to come home. The 8-year-old sister waiting. The destroyed farm. The plea not to be a hero, just to survive. "Friedrich Adler," Ben said when he finished. 18 years old, farm boy from Bavaria. His mother wanted him home. His little sister was waiting. And I shot him through the chest at 180 yards. I keep this letter to remember that every number is a person. Every kill is a family destroyed. Even when it is necessary. Especially when it is necessary. Jameson was quiet for a long time. "Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Carter." The interview was sealed. Jameson kept his promise. It would not be opened until after Ben's death. October 1970. Ben was working in his barn when Helen came out with a letter, international mail. The return address was Munich, Germany. Ben's hands shook as he opened it. German envelope. Could not be good news. Inside was a letter in English. The handwriting was careful, precise. The words were formal, but heartfelt. "Dear Mr. Benjamin Carter, my name is Klaus Brenner. I was Hauptmann Captain in Wehrmacht April 1945. You may not remember me, but I remember you very clearly. I was the officer who surrendered to you on April 25, 1945, near the crossroads east of Arnhem. You and your team had killed 53 of my men in 40 minutes using some technique I still do not fully understand. When I approached with white flag, you could have shot me. Many soldiers would have. But you accepted our surrender. You let 23 of my men live. I am writing to tell you what happened to those 23 men. All 23 survived the war. We were processed as prisoners released 1946 and 1947. We returned to families in Germany. We helped rebuild our destroyed country. Of those 23, 12 became farmers. 4 became teachers. 3 became engineers. 2 became doctors. 1 became a priest. 1 me became a school teacher. Between us, we have had 78 children and 112 grandchildren. All because you chose to accept surrender instead of continuing to shoot. I do not know how many Germans you killed during the war. I do not need to know. But I know that on April 25th, 1945, you chose mercy when you could have chosen more killing. That choice gave 23 families their fathers, sons, brothers back. It gave 78 children their fathers. It gave 112 grandchildren their grandfathers. I am 70 years old now. I may not have many years left, but I wanted you to know your mercy mattered. It echoed through 25 years and 3 generations. If you ever come to Germany, please visit. I would be honored to shake the hand of the man who gave me my life back. With deepest gratitude, Klaus Brenner, Munich, Germany. Ben read the letter 3 times, then he broke down crying. It was the first time he had cried since Danny's death 30 years ago. 30 years of held emotion. 30 years of carrying the weight of 97 German soldiers. 30 years of Friedrich's letter in his pocket and Friedrich's face in his dreams. Helen found him sobbing at the kitchen table, Klaus's letter in his hand. "Ben, what is wrong?" she asked, frightened. She had never seen him cry. "I killed 97 Germans," Ben said through tears, "but I also saved 23, and they had children and grandchildren. 190 people exist because I chose to stop shooting." Helen held him while decades of pain released. She did not fully understand. She could not. But she held him anyway. When Ben could speak again, he said, "Maybe I was not just a killer. Maybe I was also a protector, even of the enemy." The math still did not erase the 97 deaths, but it gave them context. 97 dead, but 23 lived and became 190. That had to mean something. That had to count for something, and Ben wrote back to Klaus Brenner that same evening. "Dear Captain Brenner, I remember you. I remember your face when you asked me to stop shooting. I remember the 23 men who walked out with their hands up. For 25 years, I have carried the weight of 97 Germans I killed. Your letter does not erase that weight, but it reminds me that war is more complicated than numbers. I am glad you survived. I am glad you had children and grandchildren. I am glad that on one day in April 1945, I made the right choice. Thank you for writing. You gave me something I did not know I needed. Confirmation that mercy matters even in war. Respectfully, Benjamin Carter, Haver, Montana, USA." They corresponded occasionally over the next years. 3 or 4 letters each. Never met in person. Ben never traveled to Germany. But the connection mattered. It gave meaning to the numbers. It turned 23 Germans from abstractions into real people with real lives. July 1985. Ben's grandson, Daniel Jr., age 16, was spending the summer on the farm. He was named after Ben's brother Danny, and he had the same curiosity, the same intelligence that Danny had possessed. One afternoon, Daniel asked the question Ben had been expecting. "Grandpa, Dad says you were a sniper in the war. Is that true?" Ben looked at his grandson, 16 years old. The same age Friedrich Adler had been roughly, could have been the boy Ben shot in 1945. "Yes," Ben said, "it is true." "Did you kill people?" Ben could have lied, could have deflected, but Daniel deserved honesty. "Yes, I killed 97 German soldiers that I am certain of, maybe more." Daniel's eyes widened. "That is a lot." "Yes," Ben said quietly, "it is." "How did you do it?" Ben studied his grandson for a long moment. Then he said, "Come with me." He took Daniel to the back pasture, brought his old Springfield rifle from childhood, brought 2 fresh cucumbers from the garden, brought his pocket knife. He taught Daniel the technique, how to carve the cucumber, how to hollow the center, how to secure it, how to fire. He demonstrated firing 3 suppressed shots at a target 200 yards away. Daniel heard the muffled thumps, saw how it worked. "That is actually kind of cool," Daniel said. "It is not cool," Ben said sharply. "It is desperate. This trick was not about being clever. It was about killing people quietly so they could not kill my friends. War makes us use vegetables as weapons. It turns farm boys into killers. It forces us to do things we would never do in peacetime." Daniel was quiet, sensing his grandfather's intensity. "The cucumber trick worked," Ben continued. "It saved American lives, but it also killed 97 Germans, some of them younger than you are now. I am showing you this not because I am proud. I am showing you this because you need to understand what war actually requires. War required me to turn a vegetable into a weapon. War required me to kill boys the same age as my dead brother. War required me to carry that weight for 40 years. Every time you see a cucumber, Ben said, I want you to remember this vegetable killed people. That is not natural. That is not right. That is what war does. Remember the wrongness of it. Maybe that will help stop the next war. Daniel looked at the cucumber in his grandfather's hand. Did it mess you up, Grandpa, killing all those people? Ben appreciated the directness. Every day for 40 years I have thought about it. Some days more than others. I did what I had to do. But that does not make it easy to live with. The trick is not forgetting. The trick is remembering why. I killed 97 to save 200. I stopped shooting when they surrendered because mercy mattered more than revenge. You carry the weight, but you also carry the reasons. And if the reasons were good enough, you can live with the weight. They walked back to the house in silence. Daniel never forgot that conversation. Years later, when he had children of his own, he would tell them about the grandfather who taught him that war is terrible necessary does not mean right, and mercy is the highest form of courage. March 1993. Ben was 70 years old now. His health was declining, heart problems. The doctor said maybe a year, maybe less. Ben decided it was time to give his artifacts away. He contacted the U.S. Army Heritage Center, told them he wanted to donate items from his World War II service. They accepted immediately when they learned about the cucumber technique. Ben donated his M1 Garand rifle from April 1945, the sealed interview transcript from Dr. Jameson, after action reports, Friedrich Adler's letter, all of Klaus Brenner's letters, and one preserved cucumber from April 23, 1945, kept in a sealed jar for 48 years. He attached a note in his own handwriting. This cucumber killed 7 German soldiers on April 23, 1945, but it also saved 15 Americans who would have died assaulting that position. I am not donating these items because I am proud of what I did. I am donating them because someone should remember what war actually requires. War required me to turn a vegetable into a weapon. War required me to kill boys the same age as my dead brother. War required me to carry that weight for 50 years. I want people to see this cucumber and understand. This is not glory. This is desperation. Remember the desperation. Maybe it will prevent the next war. Benjamin Carter, Private U.S. Army, 82nd Airborne Division, March 1993. The museum accepted everything gratefully, created a small exhibit. Most visitors found it absurd. Some found it fascinating. Few understood the moral weight behind it. January 15, 1994. Ben Carter died peacefully in Haver Hospital. Heart failure, age 71. Helen was with him, so were his 3 children. His last words were to Helen, "Tell Klaus Brenner thank you for the letters. Tell him the math finally made sense." Helen did not understand, but she promised anyway. The Haver Daily News published a simple obituary. Benjamin Carter, 71 lifelong Haver resident and World War II veteran, passed away January 15th. Survived by wife Helen, 3 children, 7 grandchildren. Served with distinction in U.S. Army 82nd Airborne Division, 1942 to 1945. Successful farmer and respected community member. Private funeral services. No mention of 97 kills. No mention of cucumber suppression. Just served with distinction. January 20th, 1994. The funeral was small. Haver Cemetery next to Danny's grave. The brother Ben had failed to protect 54 years ago. Family attended. Helen, the 3 children, 7 grandchildren, friends from town, fellow veterans, and 2 unexpected guests. Sam O'Brien, 77 years old, drove from Maine despite failing health, and Daniel Lee, 73, flew from Seattle where he had taught school for 40 years. But the most unexpected guest arrived last. An old man, 74 years old, who had flown across the Atlantic Ocean from Munich, Germany. Klaus Brenner. Nobody had told him about Ben's death. He had been checking Montana newspaper obituaries online for years, knowing Ben was getting old, not wanting to miss the chance to say goodbye properly. When he saw the obituary, he booked a flight immediately. Klaus approached Helen after the service. "Mrs. Carter, I am Klaus Brenner. Your husband saved my life in 1945. I had to come to say goodbye and thank you. Helen, shocked and crying, hugged him. The priest asked if anyone wanted to speak. Klaus raised his hand. He stood beside Ben's coffin and spoke in accented English. I did not know Benjamin Carter well. We met once for 5 minutes. April 25th, 1945. We were enemies. He had just killed 53 of my men using a technique I still do not fully understand. When I surrendered, he could have killed me and the 23 men I was trying to save. Many soldiers would have. But Benjamin Carter accepted our surrender. He let us live. Because of that choice, 23 German soldiers returned to their families. We had children, grandchildren. Today, 190 people exist because Benjamin Carter chose mercy over more killing. I read his museum donation note. He said the cucumber trick was not glory. He was right. It was not glory. It was survival. It was duty. It was a farm boy using what he knew to protect his friends. But what he did for me on April 25th, 1945, accepting surrender instead of executing prisoners, that was glory. That was humanity in the middle of hell. Mr. Carter carried the weight of 97 Germans he killed, but he should also know he gave 190 people their lives. That is his true legacy. Sam O'Brien spoke next. Ben Carter was my best friend for 53 years, from 1941 to today. He was the best man I ever knew, not because he killed 97 Germans, but because it broke his heart to do it. He was a farm boy who became a soldier because his brother died and he could not protect him. He killed effectively because confusion saves lives. He stopped killing when enemies surrendered because mercy matters. That is not a war hero. That is a human being trying to do right in impossible circumstances. Rest easy, Ben. You did good. Daniel Lee added, Ben taught me the cucumber trick, not because he was proud, but because he needed someone to understand that war is absurd. It makes vegetables into weapons. It turns farm boys into killers. He wanted us to remember the absurdity, so maybe we would stop creating more wars. They buried Ben next to Danny, two brothers reunited after 54 years. One who died at 14 in a tractor accident. One who spent his life trying to protect others because he could not protect his brother. 2024. Daniel Carter III, Ben's great-grandson, was 14 years old. He was studying World War II in school and asked his great-grandmother Helen about his great-grandfather. Helen was 98 years old now, frail but clear-minded. She showed Daniel everything. The museum photos, Friedrich's letter, Klaus's correspondence, Ben's final note. Daniel read his great-grandfather's words. This cucumber killed 7 Germans but saved 15 Americans. That is complicated, Daniel said. War is complicated. Helen said, her voice soft but steady. Your great-grandfather understood that better than anyone. He did terrible things for good reasons, and he carried that weight his whole life. The lesson is not that war is glorious. The lesson is that war is terrible. And sometimes terrible things are necessary. But never forget they are terrible. That spring, Daniel planted cucumbers in the family garden. Not for shooting, just for eating. The way vegetables were meant to be used. The way Ben Carter would have wanted it. The cucumber plants grew tall and strong. Daniel harvested them in July, made pickles with his great-grandmother, shared them with family at Sunday dinner. And every time Daniel looked at those cucumbers, he remembered his great-grandfather, the farm boy who became a soldier, who killed 97 Germans and saved 190 lives, who carried the weight for 50 years, who understood that mercy matters more than victory. The story of the cucumber sniper lived on, in museum exhibits, in military history books, in family stories passed down through generations. But the real legacy was simpler than that. It was the knowledge that sometimes the greatest weapon is not the one that kills most efficiently, but the one that knows when to stop killing. That necessary and right are not always the same. That mercy matters even in war, especially in war. Ben Carter had learned that lesson in April 1945, and it had taken him 50 years to understand what it truly meant. 190 people exist today because of that lesson. 190 descendants of 23 German soldiers who walked out of their positions with hands raised, trusting an American farm boy to show mercy. That is the real story of the cucumber sniper. Not the 97 kills, not the improvised suppression technique, not the military innovation. The real story is mercy, and how one moment of choosing life over death can echo through generations. Ben Carter understood that by the end, and that understanding, more than any medal or recognition, gave his life meaning. He died at peace, finally.